To exist as a Black woman in this country is to walk beneath a persistent shadow of suspicion. To be a Black woman is to shoulder not only the relentless criminalization of our Blackness, but also to endure a particular brand of punishment, one engineered to silence, diminish, and control our very own womanhood. In this episode, I lay bare a searing personal narrative, not just as a testimony, but as indictment. We'll confront the brutal reality of how society refuses to see Black women as fully human, opting instead to cast judgment and inflict punishment without ever pausing to ask why. Together, we'll peel back the layers of pain, anger, and resilience that are too often twisted into stereotypes, revealing the unseen scars and the hard won power that rises when justice is denied and empathy withheld. Greetings. I'm Meredith Davis, host of the Unseeable Black Women's Podcast, a sanctuary dedicated to elevating the voices and experiences of Black women, past and present, whose lives and stories have profoundly shaped my own journey and sense of self in these challenging times. Let's begin. There is an adage, you can take the person out of the hood. Well, let's just say my urban sensibilities have never left me. I attended a small liberal arts college in a rural city. My first drive to campus was nothing but tobacco fields and water. I had to bum a ride from someone. My father was the only driver in my family, and unfortunately, he died the summer of my senior year. His death left me marred and desensitized to life. My senior year of high school, I gave my mother and the principal hell. I was angry, and the young girl who was always mouthy with a chip was a little older and a lot more rebellious. Although I wanted to skip college and stay home and party, my mother forced me to attend. I will never forget the day she dropped me off. I appeared nonchalant, unbothered, and frankly, irritated. I couldn't wait for her to leave, but not for the reasons you think. After they dropped my last box, she gave me a quick hug and I closed the door. I slid down that motherfucker crying like a 1940s black and white movie. I was scared, sad, and loneliness in the room was just as visceral as the cold concrete walls. I was a crybaby as a child, but something broke in me when my father died. There were no tears to shed. My mantra was always 2 tears in a bucket, you know, the rest of it. But that was just my outer shell. On the inside, I was insecure and uncertain of this new journey. Little did I know my first semester was damn near my last. Attending a predominantly white institution was not something that I was unfamiliar with, but at this level and to this intensity, it was almost unbearable. I went to a citywide high school, so 60% of our high school was white and 40% was Black. But I had never seen that many white people in all my life. My roommate was the sweetest young white woman that I had ever met. She was from another part of Maryland. My hard edge didn't even seem to bother her. She was open to getting to know me, and for that, Holly, I will forever love and respect you. We took turns crying each night. She missed her boyfriend, her family, her cozy home. I missed running the streets with my friends and partying days at a time. We were both homesick in our own ways. We held each other at night, but when the sun came up, she began her day sailing on a crew team, and I attempted to get to my 8 a.m. on time. I made friends with Black students quickly. Many of us came from the Baltimore area and PG County. I was one of the most vocal students, a lot of mouth and a whole bunch of trash talk. My new best friend and I became inseparable. He was from Baltimore, but a completely different world. I swear he came out of his mother's womb checking the stock market. He went to private school, lived in a middle class neighborhood with two parents. I was like a new dish on a menu. I was so different from everyone on campus, including a lot of the Black students. Years later, my former mentors and professors confirmed that they had never seen anyone like me. I had no filter and gave no Fs. I learned some tricks the summer before and decided to bring some of my skills to campus. No sooner than 6 weeks into the semester, girl, I was suspended and sent home. My best friend and I committed the exact same violation. He went before a judicial board where his peers determined his fate, and I went before the dean of students. He was given probation, and I was sent home. He came from an upper middle class family. I came from a working family. He went to private school. I attended public school. He was given a chance to make amends. and I was told to leave. One of my mentors told me that years later, I was sent home because I lacked what they call remorse. She then told me after I left the meeting, it was vocalized by some that they would never see me again. But one of my champions and my mentors refuted, oh, she will be back. In this case, being a young Black woman on a predominantly white campus gave me extreme visibility. I was constantly under surveillance. My obsession with lack and my impulses got the best of me. I took full responsibility when I was caught doing what I did and expressed that during my judicial meeting. I was sorrowful. Unfortunately, their belief of what remorse and regret looked like didn't match my affect. In the eyes of this administrator, I was out of control and I needed a lesson. Unlike my best friend who only received probation, there was no opportunity afforded me to correct the behavior or make amends on campus. I needed to go back wherever I came from. The inability to see my humanity was not an isolated incident. Institutionalized racism provides mechanisms in every social institution that address Blackness, criminalities, and the ways in which we were controlled. My first encounter with the theory of crime and punishment was reading Michel Foucault in graduate school. Foucault's notion of crime and punishment centered on the idea that punishment is not merely about retribution for wrongdoing, but is a mechanism through which societies exercise power and control. Foucault argues that forms of punishment evolve from overt physical punishment and spectacle to more subtle, pervasive systems of surveillance, normalization, and discipline. Rather than focusing solely on crime itself, modern systems of punishment seek to regulate individuals' behavior and maintain social order by shaping conduct and reinforcing societal norms. Foucault's analysis highlights how the justice system serves as a reflection of a broader power dynamic within our society, making punishment a tool for constructing and managing populations. The United States penal system was born out of Foucauldian theory. The late 70s and early 80s was an era of suppressing, oppressing, and disenfranchising Black people, especially in urban areas. Foucault's text, The Birth of Prison, written in 1975, analyzed the historic transformations in the Western penal system. That publication, along with the exploitation films of the 70s and Lord Have Mercy, the Monahan Report, fertilized this nation's soil to grow a pipeline to prison system. Well, I flourished as a young girl in my neighborhood, leaving the area to attend a public middle school and high school. It expanded my territory and my visibility. In middle school, I had to walk at least 1 mile to catch a yellow bus to get to school. If I missed it, I had to walk the additional 2 miles because I couldn't afford to catch a bus. In high school, the cost to attend one of the best high schools in Baltimore City came with a price. It was the opposite side of town. I caught 3 city buses to high school. I shared bus stops with heroin addicts and stepped over hypodermic needles. I witnessed drug transactions and gun violence, experiencing the day-to-day hustle of keeping your head down, never smiling in certain spaces, and keeping up with the appearance of vigilance. My end of innocence not only occurred during my travels to school, but the drug epidemic began to plague my beautiful neighborhood. I lost childhood friends to drugs and violence, and my family experienced our own traumas from this changing tide. One could argue that I didn't really experience an actual criminal conviction. I was sanctioned by a dean and I was suspended. I'm not even sure if it's on my transcript. But what we should consider is that the higher education judicial system is but one of many social systems that serve as surrogates of white supremacy. Because of my love for higher education and because of these experiences, no matter how painful, I decided to go into higher education administration. And as a former college administrator, I witnessed students who received judicial sanctions from their peers with little to no interference by college administrators. I've listened and heard college administrators make assumptions about Black students because of their behavior or because of the way they have showed up to a hearing. It's still real, y'all. The criminalization of Black people does not escape any social systems, is not something that you can't find any place, anywhere, anytime in this country. I dedicated years of training judicial boards and administrators on racial bias and decriminalizing conduct violations. Part of my healing journey of misrecognition and invisibility was to educate others and empower Black students to advocate for themselves. Merging my academic, practical, and my personal experiences gave me the opportunity to create moments of authentic engagement around the criminalization of Black students, particularly on college campuses that are predominantly white, and how to create spaces for reconciliation instead of inclusion and exile. There are also theories on Black women's invisibility and systemic consequences. The notion of intersectional invisibility is closely associated with Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, who developed intersectionality theory, and Dr. Catherine W. Phillips, who, along with her colleagues, wrote extensively on intersectional invisibility. The idea of institutional unseeability and the examination of how systemic structures overlook marginalized identities have been explored by sociologists like Pat Hills Collins, whose work on Black feminist thought highlights the ways Black women's experiences are often excluded from dominant narratives. These theorists have laid the groundwork for understanding how race, gender, and class intersect to produce unique experiences of marginalization and invisibility for Black women, both at the individual and institutional level. One theory centers on the concept of cultural misrecognition, where Black women's expressions, emotions, and behaviors are filtered through a lens of bias and stereotypes, leading to the misinterpretation. When institutions fail to recognize the complexity of Black women's lived experiences, especially those shaped by trauma, loss, and resilience, they may interpret their demeanor as insubordination or lack of remorse, as seen in disciplinary settings. This misunderstanding and this misinterpretation, as well as misreading, can result in disproportionate punishment, such as suspension, termination, or involvement in the penal system, not because of the actions themselves, but because of how those actions are perceived through a prejudicial framework. Another theory is institutional unseeability, which posits that systemic structures and designs to overlook Black women's humanity and individual stories. This lack of developmental conversations or inquiries into motivations leads to punitive outcomes. Black women are often fired or criminalized because institutions don't make space for understanding, empathy, or second chances. The process is less about the violation and, once again, more about the inability or unwillingness to see the person's full humanity behind the infraction, reinforcing cycles of exclusion and marginalization. Finally, intersectional invisibility theory explains how Black women's unique identities at the crossroads of race, gender, and class render them unseeable within dominant narratives. These needs and perspectives are rarely prioritized, and their presence is often misunderstood or ignored. This invisibility can make them vulnerable to unfair treatment, such as being fired or penalized. I was remorseful. I was scared. I was frustrated. And I didn't even know who I was. But what I did know is if you were looking for a Black girl from Northwest Baltimore to beg and plead to a white woman for forgiveness, you had me all the way messed up. It just wasn't in my composition. My urban sensibilities would not allow me to show vulnerability or emotion for fear that it would be used against me. And the opposite occurred because I didn't show my vulnerabilities, because I wasn't emotional. Then it was used to think that I was not remorseful and that I was okay with what had transpired and I needed to be broken. I was an unseeable Black woman, and no prescription could correct their vision of me. In closing, we explored how my life unfolded concurrently with the changing structure of my family dynamics in the city of Baltimore. My life, like so many other Black women, are mapped by social, political, and economic practices, policies, and beliefs. That experience was a crossroad for me. I was fortunate that there were people that loved and supported me in spite of my rigid exterior. I was still a young woman, and I was only 18. Unfortunately, society does not always give young Black girls the same developmental grace bestowed upon me. My best friend's socioeconomic status, his disposition, and articulate speech signaled he was worth saving. My life could have turned out very different if not for my persistence and the refusal for some to see me beyond my posture. Retelling this story made me angry and sad, but more importantly, I feel heard. The unseeable was the heart of a Black girl, lost, confused, and traumatized by the death of her father. The unseeable was the struggle my family experienced trying to put the pieces of our lives back together when he died. What they perceived, a loud, inarticulate, rough around the edges, even though I was smart as shit, Black girl who carried urban sensibilities with no remorse. They didn't see that I was a human being. They saw me as a caricature of another type of Black person. The education, the unique campus culture began shaping my voice, and I did return. From sitting next to Sonia Sanchez to giving Dr. Jonetta Cole flowers when she arrived on campus, to having one of the greatest surrogate mothers and mentors of all time, Lucille Clifton. I was fortunate to continue the course and to finish this race. Just so you know, I got a second and a third chance. I graduated from that institution, and to this day, I'm a member of their board of directors. Hear that. See that. Recognize that. I love and miss you, Lucille. This is Dr. Meredith Davis. Like, subscribe, comment.